Today we have a very special video for you, and that is my interview with Bourbon Hall of Famer Freddie Johnson. Freddie Johnson has been a brand ambassador for Buffalo Trace for a very long time, and he is a man that brings smiles to people when he talks about life or talks about bourbon. It does not matter. Maybe you first experienced Freddie on a tour at Buffalo Trace, or maybe you saw him in the documentary Neat, which I think he stole the show in. Whatever way you remember Freddie, this is a new look at something that is very dear to Freddie, and I hope you'll enjoy this as much as I enjoyed taping it. So please take a moment and enjoy the incomparable Freddie Johnson. So ladies and gentlemen, this is a very special occasion for me, the chance to have a few minutes with Freddie Johnson, the great brand ambassador from Buffalo Trace. Freddie's visiting Michigan, and he was kind enough to give me a little bit of his time, and I wanted you to have a chance to meet him and hear a little bit about his charity work. Freddie?
Well, Don, first off, thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you. This is amazing. This whole journey has been amazing. Michigan has been amazing. The reception from folks has been wonderful. The premise behind all of this started with a fellow by the name of Raj. You've probably heard of that name.
I have, and for those folks who are familiar with, we are standing in front of Raj's bourbon cellar, which is one of a kind.
Truly one of a kind. The premise behind all of this was during the latter years of life of my dad, my father thought it was important that I know where the other members of the family were buried. And one of the places that they are buried is an old cemetery called Green Hill Cemetery in Frankfort, Kentucky. But in him carrying me around, showing me the different spots where I had relatives buried, I noticed a lot of little divots in the ground. And he never spoke of them. And then I asked him, I said, what's with all these divots in the ground? And he says, oh, those are people that have passed away that no one knew who they were, or their family members didn't have money to give them a gravesite. And so I started there, and it just kind of was implanted in my mind. And what happened was interesting enough. He had mentioned my half-brother. And I said, well, where is Alan? And he said, what do you mean? And I said, where's Alan buried? And he said, oh, he's right here somewhere. And I said, but he doesn't have a headstone either. And my dad was like, he says, I've been laying off to get one. I just never got a chance to do it. And he says, but the next time you come back to Frankfort, he'll have a headstone. And I'm thinking, okay, my half-brother gets a headstone because I was on this earth to ask my dad about it.
Right.
But now we got all these other divots that have no one to speak for them. So we were talking about the event with the bottle, with the policeman, the state trooper that was killed. So what happened was a lady by the name of Mary Jo Sullivan, who was, she works for the sheriff's department there in Franklin County. Her mother's mother was also buried in that cemetery. And she said at the time they were very poor, and her mother was buried in the paupers area, and she was one of those divots in the ground. I had no idea. The significance of that moment is Mary Jo's sister was the caregiver for my dad before he passed away with cancer. And so we started this initial effort to recognize, we got money together and we created a monument for the paupers. And then we realized the distillery was really in disrepair, and we decided to start a fundraiser to fix it up. The problem is, if you've ever talked to anyone that's tried to erect one of these old headstones, it's very expensive and it's very fragile. The monument's very fragile. So we were trying to just do social gatherings, you know, the basket dinners after church and all that stuff. And Don, it was just, we were getting further in a hole, and Mark Brown and the folks at Buffalo Trace Distillery said, why don't we help you with your cause? And I'm like, what do you mean? They said, well, we've got a root beer. It was called McGillicuddy's Root Beer when they first did the merger with the McGillicuddy line. And they said, but it doesn't match anything that is associated with Buffalo Trace. And they said, since we're a family-focused distillery, how about if we name the root beer after you? Well, immediately you think, well, this is going to be out there. Is it going to be any good, you know? And they started laughing. They said, yeah, you're going to be a part of how all this stuff fits together. But the bottom line was $1 out of every case of that root beer goes to this 501c3 called Freddie's Historical Restoration Fund. And you can actually bring it up online. It tells you all about the history and what we're doing and how to donate to it.
Well, I'm going to tell everyone is in the section below this video, you're going to have a link direct to that charity. It is a great story.
Wow.
And by the way, Freddie's Root Beer is a great root beer. My wife makes me bring a case home on every visit to Buffalo Trace.
Believe it or not, Mark Brown, who collects information from everywhere, Mark Brown sent me an article that said, your root beer is doing pretty good. Evidently, they have these taste stops around the country with craft sodas, and Freddie's Root Beer is one of the top 25 root beers in the country. Real oil of birch, the vanilla is imported in from Madagascar, real cane sugar. But the point is, those donations have produced enough money that we were able to contract with a geophysical group that came up out of Georgia. They're using a technology, this is the first time it's actually been used in this manner in the United States. But it's a military technology. It looks at vertical and lateral probes of the earth. It's hooked up with GPS units, and I have another group, a buddy that works at the distillery with me. Jimmy is a certified drone operator, and Jimmy Cardle, basically we've done aerial views, maps it to the GPS links to the digital images in the ground. What we thought were only about 1,500 unmarked locations, we have now identified over 5,000. So we are now in the process of bringing in additional funds. That's where the Freddie Soda comes in. And we were able to go back and reshoot the area, and now we're loading that onto a digital format. And we're going to load the information in of the people that we know. But then some of the sunken sites, you can look and you can actually see there's more to it. So we think in some locations, the headstone fell down into the grave when the old wooden caskets rotted. So we think we've got even more history just a foot or two below the ground. And we're going to be pulling those up out of the ground next.
Well, Freddie, I will tell you that you and I first met a long time ago. And for those of you who have had the opportunity, the great opportunity to have a tour with Freddie Johnson at Buffalo Trace, here's a chance to give back. He's a great human being. Last night was an indication. We had a little function.
Oh my.
And the people were just glad to see Freddie. And this is a great opportunity to take care and help support a charity that is very dear to him. And I hope you will do so. And you helped shape Bourbon Fool. And I want you to understand that. Part of my love for Kentucky history and everything came from this gentleman. And I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Freddie.
Don.
Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. And remember, donate. It's a great cause.
And share your bourbon.